Good morning, everyone, and happy gosh darn Wednesday. Today's a school day, and I'm ready to pop into school with my Pikachu on my arm and, Pokemon logo on the other. But basically, today I wanted to talk about Evolving Skies and what role it plays in defining, the specialty product that exists within a set like this, because Evolving Skies isn't even actually a specialty set like Crown Zenith or Champion's Path or Shining Fates, which were the many specialty sets scattered amongst the time of Sword and Shield. Evolving Skies is actually a primary set that came out, I think, soon after Fusion Strike or something like that. But basically, it does tell a tale about how one, have a set that has so many cards, right? Because this set is over 200 cards big, and that goes the same for many other sets. But not only that, it has an excessive amount of alternate arts, and I say excessive because we are looking at more than 10 of them within this one set, last I checked, I think. It's got a bunch of desirable full arts because it also has, the Rayquaza full art, and it's got the Umbreon full arts, and it's got the trainer gallery, and it's just filled with all of these ultra rares, whether they're from the trainer gallery or the regular set, that someone could get potentially in these packs. And because the set is so large, it really just makes the chance of getting that like almost like winning the lottery, like to a point, right? You're practically gambling with Pokemon, and you're hoping for the fact that you might get this one card. But granted, if you pull Moonbreon, then you already have $500+. You get it graded. Apparently, a 10 is about $800 to $1,000. And whether or not they're selling is another story, because that's something that requires more research, which I did not do this morning. But it does speak to a point where like Evolving Skies is able to exist, right? And it's able to, have been reprinted twice, from what I know. Once in November, and it got delivered around December. So like right after release, which I think it was released in August, or around this point in time, in the middle of 2022, 2021, 2022, 2021. But the point is that it was released, and about 3 months later, there's a reprint of the set, and it was actually a very small reprint where only some people were able to come in and get a couple cases, and that's it. Well, actually, I was able to get a couple cases. Maybe a business was able to get more at the time for that specific reprint. Um, but I do know from my distributor, at least, that they were really trying to limit all those pre-releases. I mean, extra, like reservations for the second release of that particular set, because one, they knew how popular it was. They secondly knew that the booster boxes were circling about like $150, and they were still able to offer it at a competitive rate of like, I got my boxes at like I think $89 each for each of them, and I bought 2 cases, and so altogether it was like, let's see, 89 times 12, so $1,068 just about. Which relative to today is like, I could only get maybe 3 booster boxes for that price, because at this point you are seeing Evolving Skies on TCG Player for about $369 as your lowest cost option, not including any of the individual 36 pack sets or any of the boxes listed by anyone who has like 0% feedback, because obviously, as a buyer, you want to make sure that you're buying from someone who has at least established themselves as a seller, while also establishing their reputation, as far as like, oh, does this person ship well? Do they ship fast? Are they, respectful of their customers, whether or not they have questions? A lot of that is really entailed in the feedback that they have, and also in your questions as buyers that you could potentially propose before you even make the purchase. So all of that included, Evolving Skies did, after that first reprint, go from about like 150 to, I think it went all the way down to like 135 just for the smallest bit of time, which used to actually be available on TCG Player, but now TCG Player and the Collector app really only pay attention to about a 1-year data frame. And so you have to be mindful about like maybe saving some of these things, especially if you're going to be a long-term investor, like take a snapshot of everything going on as of, the beginning of the year, and then look at the last fiscal year and see where the rises and the pitfalls were, because this is actually some really good information that you have just disposable at your hands for free, because TCG Player isn't charging for it, and neither is the Collector app. But something that it does provide for you is a portion of context of the market at the point in time that it was experiencing this volatility, right? Because you have the story of this is exactly what was recorded in history. It's almost like a balance sheet at the end of the year. When you look at the end of the fiscal year of a company's like potential activity, like after looking at the cash flows and whatnot, this is the accounting nerd coming out, but after looking at the cash flows and, you know, the income statement and all that stuff, you see the balance sheet, and at the end of the year you see this point in time. This is what's left. This is what they have. Like, these are the assets, these are the liabilities, this is like the equity on board, like this is everything. And while it does show you like an imprint of history, what it doesn't tell you is what happened. And that's actually where you got to look at the cash flows, and you have to, you know, read all the notes and everything in their financial statements. But in the world of Pokemon, what you end up doing is looking up things through TCG Player and looking at the news. What happened during the year of COVID? Well, during the year of COVID, you know, people weren't able to go to TCG card game stores, or they weren't able to go into actually even GameStop. You know, for a while, a lot of these stores were supposed to shut down and no one was able to buy anything. But it did open up a secondary way of doing business, right? Where some of these LGSs were doing like pick up, you know, your pre-orders, make your orders online and then we'll supply them for you. During this time, it was the incredible rise of Whatnot and Drip Shop and any other sort of live streamed pack rip openings that were happening. During this time, we saw the influence of like people like Leonhardt opening a whole bunch of really amazing packs on his channel. We saw Logan Paul come in and, you know, buy that booster box and sell individual like first edition packs for like $10,000. There was a rise in popularity. Heck, even Gary Vee got involved. A whole bunch of rappers, literally everyone and their mom came into Pokemon and decided, you know what, this is a hobby that I can actually take part in because COVID's happening, and that means I can't go to like the gym for a while that was closed. I can't go do any of my indoor activities that I used to be able to do with people and or hang out with them, which meant that you had to spend time with family and you had to spend time with like people who are closer to you. And sorry, not had to, but the fact is that you only had so many options, and the Pokemon trading card game was really one of those viable ones where people could go back to their collections. This was a time of rest almost. Maybe not even voluntarily, but a lot of people lost their jobs due to this, and that meant that they had a lot of free time, which then entailed looking inwards to a point, right? And so this turned into looking into the hobby, and that also brought in more people. Like, so many shifts in the population that existed of TCG card players, of collectors, of then, you know, riding that wave of influencers that then made people into scalpers, because you saw all of these stories, and during this time you even see news stories. Like, this is all external data that you get to look up and research and then be like, wow, like 2020 to 2021 to early 2022 was some of the most interesting like times for Pokemon. And it's just like a thing where you could almost make a timeline and then see like when Target started implementing those, you can only buy 2 items or like one of each item, however it was, or even those signs that said, you know, Target or and name a big box store is no longer going to be selling Pokemon or TCG products because of the safety like worries that the store had for their employees. Because there were even news stories like somewhere in middle America, I forgot already which state, but where someone was actually like assaulted at gunpoint. And so you see these stories and it's just telling you like, oh my god, stuff was crazy during this time. And the scalping prices really tell you why, because for someone who maybe was like down on their luck, despite the fact that the government was printing out money faster than they could really justify or, you know, figure out where it was coming from potentially, people were down on their luck. And so a lot of this meant doing the scalping. And mind you, I'm not going to say anything bad about them, because potentially the scalpers, I don't know their story. I really don't. And so I don't really find myself in a position where I can judge them and say like these were bad people, because I truly don't believe that they were. I believe that they're people who were down on their luck, who saw an opportunity to make a little bit of money, because I don't know. I don't know the story. And my brain likes to make up the best possible scenario that at least justifies it, which in my mind is possibly like a family that didn't have any money, and so you maybe just had a little bit of scrap money that you could spend, you know, and spend it on a couple of these packs and sell them for maybe, sure, 3 times their value. And it sucks, because it sucks for everyone who, you know, had to work and couldn't make it to the store or couldn't make their pre-orders because they were also limited. But at the very least, someone's family got to eat. Someone's family got to enjoy this, and it sucks. It really does. It really sucks for the entire community who tried to go to the stores and who wanted to collect just for the purposes of collecting. But I can't say whether or not they were in a good position or bad position, or whether or not this was necessarily right or wrong. I might not agree with it, but it just is what it is. And so, moving on from that, right? There's a lot of external data that I'm trying to say that is very important, that you should be taking into account as you're looking at Evolving Skies, because there is a history here where there were a couple of reprints. There was actually one most recently that I actually heard from Rudy, because it was the only one that I've seen confirmed. Because anyone that you ask on Burbank, you know, you're like, hey, was there a reprint? People are like, oh no, we're still waiting, blah blah blah. It's like, is this the average consumer? Is this someone who owns a store? Is this, you know, you have to ask who your purveyor of information also is. In this case, for me, the person you're talking to here or listening to here is someone who has a light relationship with a beta distributorship, which allows me to get Pokemon stuff, hence in the back, who is able to hear from that distributor, and they, you know, release little news notes here and there, detailing like the amount of waves there might be about a certain product, how much less their price is compared to MSRP, profit margins, and how they're being affected for businesses. Like, they provide a decent amount of information that one can take in and then make like rational or better business decisions moving forward. So that is what I have, and behind that, I guess I was a judge, because I really took over the league that I had here in Medford, Oregon for about 3 years, in the absence of our prior professor, because he got a full-time job. And granted, I had a full-time job, but my weekends were free. So the point is, I had time to offer, and so I did that for a while. I was a player for years before that, and I started collecting since 2010. So I have the knowledge that's sparsed out through being the beginner, being the player, being the collector, being the investor, being the professor, being the tournament organizer, being all of these roles, right, in the community, which, you know, a lot of us have probably been just about any one of these, if not more, because, you know, I've never been the parent at a Pokemon organization play type event, because I just haven't. But I'm sure they have a unique experience that could then let us know, like, what was important to their kids, what was important for, you know, the event to actually go well, because I really only had whatever my players told me, like, oh, did you have fun at this event? And then they'd be like, yeah, like, this was really great, or I like that you implemented this, or, you know, the side events that you started working on, you know, they weren't that good, but I think you could make them better. And then it's like, getting people's opinions really helps. And so the point is that I have all of these experiences, and so this is what I can share with you, and that doesn't make anything that I say fact. It doesn't make anything that anyone else says online fact. It really just gives you a portion of knowledge given their background, and then you are the person that decides whether or not this information can be used as potential proof, or potential, like, this is a little questionable because, you know what, she said beta distributorship, and that is true. I'm not an official LLC, which means that I don't get to enjoy the brick and mortar traditional relationship with a distributor, but I do get to have a distributorship type relationship with the person group that I have, because I had business with them ever since like about 2013, and we didn't really get into talks till about 2018. We had to have 5 years of back to back to back to back purchases that proved that I was willing to continue going up that ladder and make orders sizable enough for them to consider me. So moving back to Evolving Skies, because we've skipped it a couple times. Evolving Skies had that second reprint sometime in 2022 where Rudy actually only admitted to getting one case of booster boxes. And so at that point, I do wonder to a point whether or not this was just like backstock that was just then later released by the distributor and said, hey, you know, we can only offer you guys one each because we survey, say, 500 different stores in the area. And again, this part is, I don't know if they have 500, I don't know if they have 1,000, I don't know if they have 2,000, right? But wherever these distributorships are usually regionally based, and so they take care of maybe a handful of states on their side of things. The same way that you have like the CPI split out through like the west, the south, southeast, east, and such regions where people are able to decide which states belong to whom. But the point is that Evolving Skies is in the place that it is right now, and right now it's, you know, that 369 for reasons that exist outside of just the fact that it is a singular box. Because if you look at it that way, if you look at any of these products that way, like, it's just a box. Yes, it's literally just a box with cardboard inside. Some of it has foil. But if you look at it that way, then Pokemon as a whole is not justified. Pokemon as a whole is really just a good that exists, and certain people tend to buy it because they enjoy it, buy it because they think that it holds some value, despite it just being an unregistered asset with no other benefit other than the fact that it looks pretty. Yeah. But Evolving Skies also has the fact that it has Moonbryon. It has the demand behind it. It was short printed, and even when it was reprinted in, you know, little lots that weren't even sizable enough to provide a giant, like Rudy in this case, more than one case. And so you have to think about that and consider your local LGS, while profitable, might not beat that. And if it does, maybe they got 2 cases, maybe they got 3. But at the end of the day, when you're, you know, when doing this research on market share and stuff like that, even here in Medford, Oregon, where you have like secondary competitors such as big box stores where people could literally just go because they know that Walmart's gonna have packs, they know Target's gonna have packs, and, you know, maybe they don't feel like going to a card store because that just feels too nerdy for them. You know, given all of this, there's a total of about 19 different competitors that sliced and diced my market share because we did that. We had to make sure that our numbers were as accurate as possible. And even then, in a month, I might have 1,000 individual orders locally. And let me tell you, that's actually not a lot of orders, depending on how much a person buys on average, which I'm still trying to figure out with like the TCG Player store that I have online. We were able to meet about like 100 orders in this last month, and the average order at the time was about like $12, and that's with a mix of booster boxes, PSAs, and singles. And so this number is actually relatively high in my mind, because you have to consider the fact that the majority of these orders, at least about 80 of them, were all singles based, and so they were getting like maybe 3 to 5 singles, and then I was shipping and doing the thing, and then whoop, out into the open for them to enjoy, right? Well, for a store to deal with the fact that they have maybe 1,000 orders, if I only got, say, the 1 case, right? Maybe not even, maybe I only got half a case, and so I only bought a few boxes. What's a business to do with 72 packs and about 1,000 consumers that might pop into their store and say, hey, do you have this? You can't splice and dice those 72 packs any more than getting to that 72 base, because before that you only have 3 booster boxes that might only help 3 people, and that's nothing. That's literally maybe your first day, you have it on the shelf, and so you have to make the decision of, am I going to sell this at MSRP? Am I going to value it at higher? Is there a market price change? Which at this point, yes, there is. It is more than justified for a store to say, you know what, because I am local, or for this or that reason, you know, for a nice store who does you the favor, they might only charge you about $300, despite the fact that they're taking their fees for the credit card machine, the fact that they're paying for employees, like any sort of overhead that they might have on top of them, and they might still only charge you $300 for that box. And you're still gonna be like, oh no, $300? $300 is $50 of savings, and they're paying for things. and they're there every single day, or however their schedule is, and they're providing the community as a whole a good experience, which is only done because you pay sometimes these elevated prices, but that's only to meet the market, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to backtrack time. And if Pokemon doesn't make a reprint, because we don't know, right? Everything's speculation until it happens. And so because you don't know whether or not it's going to happen, and so you don't also want to live with FOMO. It depends on everything that's going on in your life that then decides whether or not this purchase is worth it. Honestly, a lot of people just fight with the simple fact of it'll be fun. It'll be fun to open this with, my sister or my friends, and or in front of the league. I mean, do you know how exciting it was in 2018 when I was a Pokemon League leader here in Redford, and I brought in, it was like the end of a quarter for the kids, right? And so I told them, bring in your report cards, and for every A, I'll give you guys a pack. And these are my packs, so I didn't really care. And so I managed to get like at least, what was it, like 8 kids to come, and the A's were sparsed out. One of them was a straight, actually no, 3 of them were straight A students, and they gave me a run for my money. But that was good, because overall, it meant that I could encourage within the league a positive encouragement for education. And so these kids would then come, and I was giving the Hidden Fates packs away, and one of the students, not even the straight A student, but one of the kids ended up pulling the full art shiny Charizard, and everyone roared for that child. It was an excitement that comes from a sense of community, from a sense of the league's togetherness, that it's amazing. And that's the kind of experience that you can't fabricate. You can't, it's hard to even recreate, because it has to be organic. It has to be something that exists with something like a set like that, like Hidden Fates, like Evolving Skies, like Dragon Majesty, or even Celebrations, like stuff that just is iconic, right? It's an iconic set at this point. Like when people think back to Sword and Shield, and maybe it's 5 years later, what was the best set? Evolving Skies, hands down. What was the most overlooked set? In my opinion, it's Chilling Reign. Because honestly, it was amazing. The alternate arts within it were super, like, primo. It's just awesome. Like, I never pulled the alternate art Moltres, but I wanted to. And I did open quite a few packs for it, but the point is, circle back, because we tangent a lot here. Evolving Skies has a lot to offer, and I don't see it going down anytime soon. And we will hope for that reprint, because I would love to have more boxes, right? I think anyone would. And or I would love people to get their first box, or their first Elite Trainer box of the set, because honestly, it is hard. So, have a great day. I hope you guys kick butt, because it is Wednesday, and I need to go kick butt at school and write my paper, and I'm sure you guys have work, school, family, obligations of any kind, right? So, be safe, take care, subscribe if you'd like, and have a great, awesome, possum day. Bye, guys.